Good morning. This is Northern Light for Friday, May 5th. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
SUNY Plattsburgh is hosting a summit tomorrow to talk about all aspects of well-being. One part of the day is devoted to racial healing.
You know, if we're in a community where people don't support each other, people aren't accepting of each other, it's a lot more difficult to be mentally sound and, have peace of mind.
This weekend, Burlington pays tribute to Bruce Cipher, the man who led the city's renaissance years ago from Rust Belt town to thriving downtown. He died recently. And Adirondack author Maxwell Eaton is out with a graphic novel about a young girl developing her wilderness skills.
My partner and I are doing our best to raise two tough, strong, confident little people. And if they can see themselves in a book, then that only helps with that effort.
And John Warren checks the trail conditions in the Adirondacks for us this weekend. Plus, we'll take a look at events going on throughout the region. All of that and more is coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by the Depot Theatre, Westport, a professional equity theater in the Adirondacks, celebrating its 45th season, depottheatre.org. And by St. Lawrence Health, whose affiliation with Rochester Regional Health means more patient access to specialty care, stlawrencehealthsystem.org.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. This weekend, Burlington, Vermont will pay tribute to the man who engineered that city's renaissance from a Rust Belt town to one of the East's most vibrant places to live. Bruce Cipher was in charge of economic development in Burlington in the 1980s. He died last November after a long struggle with multiple health challenges. He was 72 years old. There'll be a celebration of his life this Sunday at 3 at the First Unitarian Universalist Society on Pearl Street in Burlington. Back in 2016, after Cipher published a book about his economic development methods, David Summerstein invited him to Watertown to ask if his ideas could work in the North Country, too. Here's that story.
Sure, Vermont. Quaint town, small state. In Burlington, a gorgeous view of our mountains, I might add. Primed for a renaissance from the start, right? But what about struggling North Country cities? What can Burlington's success teach us here? So one day, I met Bruce Cipher in the heart of downtown Watertown, Public Square.
So here we are, looking at downtown Watertown.
Cipher gets out of his car and immediately kicks the tires. Infrastructure?
Streets have been redone, the sidewalks are redone.
Check. Natural assets?
Park's beautiful.
Check. Then he scans the storefronts. The sidewalk's pretty much empty.
What I see now is for lease signs, a secondhand store, and vacancies. And beautiful buildings. But what they need is our entrepreneurs who've done their planning to find ways to make money to populate these businesses. And to me, looking at what we've done in Burlington, it's definitely feasible.
Should we go into the Crystal?
Yes, please.
We duck into the Crystal Restaurant, one of Public Square's few businesses to survive through the years, and take a table. Cipher has the slightly hurried look of someone always checking in on things. Hair tousled, buttoned down, a little ruffled.
Our strategy was to help locally owned companies in our community and try to recycle our resources within the community. I would go to talk to people and ask them, I'm from the government, how can I help?
It was the 1980s. Bernie Sanders, you know that guy, he was mayor. And much of Burlington was a dump, like the rest of the cities of the Rust Belt.
This used to be an urban wasteland down here. We had oil tanks, and we had old abandoned rail cars, and we had, abandoned vehicles.
Brian Pine was a youth employment advocate back then. He became the city's longtime housing director. He remembers a day in 1996 when Bruce Cipher summoned officials to the worst of it, the polluted wasteland of the Burlington waterfront, to talk about brownfield redevelopment. Then Governor Howard Dean was there. Then Senator Jim Jeffords was there. Cipher climbed up on a rock and addressed the crowd.
He was standing on this big boulder, and he had his arms outstretched, and it looked like he was preaching, and he was preaching about the idea that, you can change this, we're changing it, and you can go home and do this.
They did it. The waterfront today bustles with museums and restaurants and walking trails. Cypher's secret sauce is to make economic development fun.
Business can be hard, and I think it should be fun.
In Cypher's world, that means make up things to do and just give them a cool name. Pop-up concerts in vacant storefronts, fashion shows in empty warehouses. Anything to make downtown seem like the place to be.
In Brattleboro, Vermont, they have something called Strolling of the Heifers. It's a rural area. Thousands and tens of thousands of people go to our small town in Vermont to see the cows stroll through town. And part of that is the branding of the name, Strolling of the Heifers. In Burlington, we have something called the South End Art Hop.
In Burlington, you were doing this from the beginning, branding, career fairs, and putting banners over Main Street for every single event. Why were you doing that?
Well, our hope was to let people know that there was things going on in the community. We worked to promote what was happening within our community. We try to find ways to have people have a good time. And so people would want to go and put their time, money, and effort into something.
Cypher says he doesn't want these tactics relegated to the dustbin of history, as he puts it.
I really enjoyed what I did. It's hard work, but I wanted to share our successes, and I wanted to help others succeed.
So Cypher co-wrote a book distilling his ideas called Sustainable Communities, Creating a Durable Local Economy.
And in that book, there's about 200 initiatives, and I'd say 75% of them were a lot of fun. We created all kinds of events and organizations where people got to know one another. They got to commune, become friends, do business with one another, and create opportunities that didn't exist before.
Cypher and I finish lunch and head to a meeting we set up with Watertown's economic developers.
Zoning, and so you get elected. Hey, Bob.
You might have noticed that Cypher sounded soft-spoken, a little formal when we were in the Crystal. He gets that way in an interview. But off mic, chatting with these guys, he jokes, he swears, he laughs.
We'll help you get this accomplished.
They talk shop, strategic plans, zoning boards, revolving loan funds, economic developer kind of stuff. Afterwards, Don Rutherford, Watertown's lead economic developer, looks like a guy who found a like mind, someone who gets what he's going through. But he also looks a little worn down. Watertown is not Burlington.
Politics is different in New York than it is in Vermont. It's a little bit more difficult here in New York to get some of the things done that Bruce has talked about.
More red tape, less attention from influential state leaders. Rutherford and his team put together an exciting proposal for one of those big $10 million state grants for city projects. They didn't get it.
Now, what is needed is we need to identify, based on factual analytical data, what would work downtown.
Watertown is making some progress. The craft beer and tapas restaurant is going in next to the Crystal. A kids' indoor playground opened around the corner. The old Woolworth and Lincoln buildings are being rehabbed. I walked Bruce Cypher back to his car on Public Square.
I would approach it by talking with all the property owners one by one and ask them, what's holding them back? What do they need? So you have to find out what their obstacles to succeed are. And then my job is to solve those obstacles.
Then Cypher's face lights up. You recall seeing wineries on his drive. You could have Watertown Winery Day here in the square, he exclaims. People partying on the lawn, a pop-up wine shop in each vacant store. Cypher takes one last look around and says, yeah, we could do something here. David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio on Public Square in Watertown.
This story first aired in 2016. Since then, Watertown won a downtown revitalization grant and is repurposing several buildings for new businesses. Cypher died last November. A celebration of his life is this Sunday at 3 at the First Unitarian Universalist Society on Pearl Street in Burlington.
listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 8:10. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Just ahead, John Warren gets us up to date on trail conditions in the Adirondacks this weekend. It's in just a few minutes here on Northern Light.
Music by Plattsburgh's Roan Yellowthorn. Listen to more music on our website at ncpr.org/_. Northern Light is supported by Barstow Subaru, Potsdam, committed to the safety and security of all-wheel drive. Details at barstowsubaru.com. And Adirondack Foundation, helping people and families build a legacy of generosity for the Adirondacks. AdirondackFoundation.org.
The North Country's lone Democrat in Albany voted for all 10 of the state budget bills this year. But that doesn't mean Assemblyman Billy Jones is thrilled with the spending plan. He says it was the most frustrating of the 7 budgets he's worked on in the legislature.
I don't think anybody's walking away with this with their hands in the air. We were, 32 days late. Had a lot of policy in it, which I'm always a big fan of, knocking policy out of a budget.
Even though he was against some components of Governor Kathy Hochul's housing proposal, Jones says he wanted to see the budget addressing housing affordability. Still, he says he was glad to help secure funding for North Country seniors, agriculture, business development, and infrastructure. This year's budget brought further changes to bail reform, giving judges more discretion to set bail. Jones says he's sure further changes will be the subject of future budget talks.
People are saying that we didn't go far enough. I've talked to a few DAs. I've talked to a few of my judges here. They like the measures that were taken. Do they want it back to the way it was before? Probably.
Jones says he's narrowing down his priorities for the rest of the session, which ends in early June. They could include pension reform and changes to the state's retirement law.
More employees at the Claxton Hepburn Medical Center in Ogdensburg have voted to unionize. The hospital already had 200 employees who were part of the United Healthcare Workers East Labor Union. The new members who voted to join the union on Tuesday include ultrasound technologists, MRI technologists, and respiratory therapists. They'll begin negotiating their first union contracts with the hospital soon.
When people struggle with mental health, they shouldn't have to just deal with it. That's the message students in SUNY Plattsburgh's wellness campaign want to share. They've started a group called #HealWithIt. The group is co-hosting a self-care summit on campus tomorrow that's open to the public. Champlain Valley reporter Kara Chapman has more.
Before she joined #HealWithIt at SUNY Plattsburgh, freshman Ananya Podar thought self-care was just about making yourself feel good emotionally.
But when I joined the campaign, I learned that, mental health is about many things other than emotional wellness.
In fact, there are 7 other pillars of wellness: physical, social, spiritual, intellectual, environmental, vocational, and financial. #HealWithIt's members have spent the semester teaching other groups on campus about those pillars. They've asked the groups to sign a mental health pledge and post for photos with their hands painted green for mental health awareness. #HealWithIt's efforts culminate in this Saturday's self-care summit, which they've co-organized with the college's event planning class. Senior Amelia Stevens says the goal is to provide people with a structure for how to take care of themselves.
Having all these different events to go to and learn about is going to be something that can be helpful to a lot of people. I know going around to the different clubs, it's been really rewarding to see people actually learn things from what we're saying and not just listen just because they have to.
The summit's offerings range from yoga and meditation to art and dance. There will be therapy dogs, a nature walk, and a portion geared specifically toward kids. The organizers also thought it was important to have a segment focused on race. One of the college's truth, racial healing, and transformation circles will take place during the summit. Podar, who's from India, says she's faced racism and bias as an international student.
You face a lot when you come here initially as an international student, and there are issues where people, they don't accept you easily.
She and fellow freshman Avery Skatina say being in an unwelcoming community makes it hard to pursue wellness.
You know, if we're in a community where people don't support each other, people aren't accepting of each other, it's a lot more difficult to be mentally sound and, have peace of mind.
The Self-Care Summit is free and open to the public. Podar wants people to know that it's for everyone. She says she and Skatina recently went to a church service where two women in their 50s and 60s shared their mental health struggles. Hearing their stories brought tears to her eyes.
That's where I learned that, mental health is not only for teenagers and not only for youngsters. It's for everyone, no matter the age. Everybody's dealing with something.
Podar says everyone has the right to be in a good place in their lives and to have access to resources for mental health. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio.
A new children's book is out this week from Adirondack author Maxwell Eaton III. Eaton's graphic novel is called Survival Scout, Lost in the Mountains, and it's the first in a series of books about a young girl developing her wilderness skills. Eaton is reading from his book tomorrow afternoon from 1 to 2 at the Cascade Welcome Center in Lake Placid, and he spoke with our Adirondack reporter Emily Russell about the new book and what he hopes readers learn from it.
Our protagonist, Scout, who's maybe a 10-year-old girl, she's competent, she's capable, but she's constantly being thrown in harm's way either by adults or by natural forces. In this one, she's out on a backpacking trip with her brother when he reveals that they've been lost for 3 days and he has no idea where they are and might not even be on the map. And she starts trying to figure things out when he gets scared off by a bear and leaves her out in the wilderness 3 days from nowhere. So she needs to figure out where she is, where home might be, whether she should stay put, whether she should head out. She's got half the camping gear, too, so she needs to figure out a shelter, a way to make water safe to drink, and so on and so on.
I know this is a kid's graphic novel, but I wonder if it's also geared towards adults, because as we know, adults get lost in the woods all the time. So is there an aim towards, also informing parents about, skills that you need to have to be safe in the woods?
Yeah, I hope that seeps in there and they absorb some of this because they are all skills that anybody heading into the Adirondacks or any mountains or anywhere outside of town should know how to deal with. Things like reading a map and how to use a compass. Not everybody knows. It's easy to say, carry a compass, but I can figure out north or south or east or west without a compass. How is this tool going to help me?
So one of your daughter's names is Scout, and a lot of characters in your books are girls. Why is that?
First of all, why not? I think the default was a little boy every time, especially for a book called Survival Scout. I think that's what comes to some people's minds if they had just heard the title. My partner and I are doing our best to raise two tough, strong, confident little people. And if they can see themselves in a book, then that only helps with that effort.
What goes into creating a book like this? Can you sum it up for folks who don't know anyone who's written a book or drawn illustrations for one? What does it take to release something like this?
Well, from beginning to now, it is, first of all, I'll say it's one of my favorite things in the world. And I love every minute of it. But maybe like a backpacking trip, it's a slog too, and it's miserable at times during the process. But when it's all over, you just want to do it again, and you forget all of the misery. I was thinking about this book this morning when I was brainstorming with my editor what this series might be. I think it was in 2019, before the pandemic. I remember signing the book deal in the throes of lockdown thinking, I better get this signed before the world crumbles. At least I could get paid for this book. And then I finished this book, the illustrations, a year and a half ago. And the illustrations, when I'm working on the final artwork, that can take, 2 or 3 months of 16, 18 hours a day, losing your mind illustrating. So it's a labor of love.
What does it feel like to get to this moment?
It is so gratifying, and it is with every book. This book in particular, this was the first graphic novel I'd done in a while. And with a picture book, 32 or 40 pages. It can be very involved depending on what style of illustrating you're doing. But this one is, there's no getting around 144 or 160 pages. You just got to do it. And on top of it, this book feels so personal because it involves all of my interests. It occurred to me how wonderful this book and this series are when I was buying some piece of camping equipment and I realized, this can be a business expense. And when all of your worlds and your favorite things are suddenly all meshed and locked together like that, it's really cool. So I'm so proud of this book. I'm proud of all my books, but I'm really proud of this one. So I love it. And I can't wait for people to read it.
That was author and illustrator Maxwell Eaton III speaking with Emily Russell. Eaton is reading from his new book tomorrow afternoon from 1 to 2 at the Cascade Welcome Center in Lake Placid.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. In just a minute, we've got music from a group based out of Hamilton, Ontario. They've got a show coming up at the Clayton Opera House. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note. That's just ahead at 8:42. But first, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
Blue sky, sunshine, well, sort of today, but more so tomorrow. The Weather Service says highs this afternoon near 60. Light winds out of the north, and then lows tonight around 40. Tomorrow, sunshine, highs near 70. And then Sunday and Monday, the Weather Service says partly to mostly sunny skies with highs in the 60s near 70. So it should be a nice weekend. Right now, we've got partly sunny skies, 47 degrees here in Canton. And John Warren checks outdoor conditions for the Adirondacks.
The cooler and wet weather will break later today, just in time for a really pleasant, though breezy weekend weather-wise. There will be some areas of morning fog tomorrow, however, and the highest summits will be mostly in the 40s through the weekend, with wind chills just below freezing. The mud season advisory remains in effect, so it's best to stick to trails below 2,500 feet and expect to encounter mud. Rivers and streams are running well above normal, even for this time of year. It will be a great weekend for whitewater rafting, although some stream crossings may be impassable in the high peaks. The Hudson River will be running at about 6 feet at the gauge in North Creek tomorrow. The Racket River is a little over 9 feet at Piercefield, and the Lake Champlain gauge a little north of Whitehall is at about 99 1/3 feet and will likely reach flood stage of 100 feet this weekend. Water temperatures remain cold. Upper Saranac Lake is in the mid-40s. Mirror Lake is around 50 degrees, and the temperature in the south basin of Lake George, a warmer spot on that lake, is in the upper 40s. The upper locks on Saranac Lake have reopened to boat traffic. The Lake Placid boat launch will be closed from May 8th to May 12th. In the Saranac Lakes Wild Forest, the Little Clear Pond Road is now open. In the Silver Lake Wilderness, the West River Road, which allows access to the White House Trailhead on the Northville Placid Trail, is now open for the season. And finally, there will be a full moon this weekend. Those are the outdoor conditions in the Adirondacks for this weekend. For North Country Public Radio, this is John Warren from the New York Almanac. Online at NewYorkAlmanac.com.
This is music now by the Hamilton, Ontario-based group Steel City Rovers. They're performing Saturday, May 20th at the Clayton Opera House. You can get your tickets at claytonoperahouse.com. This is their song, Summer Dance at Montmagny. Steel City Rovers, a Hamilton, Ontario-based group. Their song Summer Dance at Montmagny. Again, they're performing later this month at the Clayton Opera House. You can find out more and get your tickets at claytonoperahouse.com.
That'll do it for Northern Light for this Friday, May 5th.
Before we go, I do want to mention a couple of events going on this weekend. It's a gallery opening for 2 different galleries in the region, including for the Adirondack Artists Guild. They're open for the season, and they have an opening reception tonight from 5 to 7 for their exhibit called Celebrating Flora. All 15 members of the Artists Guild are presenting floral-inspired pieces, from handmade dolls to photographs to paintings and colored pencil. You can find out more from AdirondackArtistsGuild.com. And also head to the North Star Gallery on Pearl and Malone. It's the annual middle and high school art exhibit. Students deliver their best work, and it will be exhibited at their gallery. You can find out more at foothillsartsociety.com.
I'm Todd Moe. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Have a good weekend.